further ado, Dr. Adam Malone. Thank you, Michael. And thanks to the Wilmington Renaissance Corporation for having me down, and to the Chris White Gallery for hosting the event. And thank all of you for coming. So I'm going to start with a little quiz for you. It's interactive. Who here is an artist? Good. All right. Do you live in Wilmington? A few people? Okay. Who here is a craftsman, maker, or manufacturer? Craftsperson. A few. Okay. Who has heard of a makerspace? A few. Hackerspace? 3D printer? Okay, great. Who has a 3D printer? One. Not bad. Not bad. All right, so that's enough for the Q&A for now, but that gave me a sense of who's here and who's here in Wilmington, which is part of why I'm here. I wanted to know more about Wilmington. See if there's anything I can do to help you achieve the goals that you have down here. So, without further ado, I'll tell you a little bit about what I've done in Philadelphia and what NextFab is about. So, in short, actually I'll start with a little history and put it in context. So, I have a lot of school, a lot of degrees and so on, but at some point during my PhD program, I was working on 3D printing technology for my PhD. And I had a chance to take a 3D printer that I was making, kind of a low-cost, build-it-yourself type of machine, to an opening of a fab lab in South Africa. So there was an organization out of MIT in Massachusetts Institute of Technology, that was working with the South African government to set up some laboratory spaces, kind of like a public library, but instead of books and maybe computers, it had computers and machine tools and electronics workbenches. And a librarian who actually had knowledge of how to use these tools and could teach people. So I was there with my little 3D printer, and there were other people there with other technologies. And I was just really struck by how people in this township outside of Johannesburg were able to, without technical education, learn how to use these tools very quickly and start thinking about solutions to problems that they were confronted with in their daily lives. And I said, hey, I could go back to academia and write articles for a pretty narrow field at a time. Not very many people are into 3D printing. Or I could try to do something that helps get the technology into the hands of people who have something really valuable to do with it. So I elected the latter, and that path eventually led me to founding NextFab. So NextFab is really about a place to make things. If you're an artist, a place to realize some creative vision that might leverage high-tech tools or tools that you don't have access to that are bigger than maybe you can fit in a small studio. It's a place, if you're an entrepreneur, to turn your idea into a first version of your product. If it's a physical product, that's what we're focused on. And maybe actually start to make the first 10, 20, 100 products to get into the hands of the market, get some feedback, or maybe show to investors and try to get your company started. And it's also a place for the general public who maybe don't want to be artists, don't want to be entrepreneurs or makers, but do want to understand a little bit more about how things are made, to see the technology firsthand, demystify a little bit about what modern manufacturing could be. And this is all in service of trying to kind of help us think about what sort of manufacturing, if any, we should be doing in the U.S. going forward. So the mission of the company is, it's a little bit like a nonprofit, and I was on the fence, should it be nonprofit, for-profit, but anyway, I went with this mission, and then we try to make it pay for itself. So we're really trying to promote awareness, access, competence, and commerce with advanced manufacturing technology. So fancy tools, show you how to use them. You'll understand more if that's all you want to do. You'll be able to do more if that's what you want to do. You'll be able to start a business and employ people if that's what you want to do. But the vision is to have everything under one roof for an entrepreneur to turn their idea into a working product of almost any kind that sort of maybe is about human size or smaller. So in the building we have metal shop. So this is manual machine tools, welding, fabricating tools, computer-controlled machine tools, water jet cutting, and then a big wood shop, lots of milling equipment for turning rough cut tree into well-shaped planks, boards that then can be turned into furniture or sculpture, computer-controlled woodworking tools, spray painting finishing room, chemistry wet lab if people want to work with chemicals or biomaterials. We actually have tools for working with fabrics, so sewing equipment, but some fancy computer-controlled sewing equipment, embroidery equipment, industrial sewing for putting together really heavy-duty materials like leather, canvas, or even plastics. We have laser cutting and engraving, so these are machines that let you make very complicated shapes, simply like, in essence, printing them, but a laser cuts through the material to give you that precise shape. Lots and lots of 3D printers, large format printing, so printing 2D materials, but 5 or 6 feet wide and as long as you want to make them. And then we actually have spaces in the building here for startup companies to actually have their office on site. So as they're getting started, it's an affordable place for them to call home, receive their mail, receive their packages, and work on their hardware products and the rest of the building. And then we have some teaching facilities. There's a conference room. These things are all available to users of the facility as well. So a lot of different ways of using, or a lot of different categories of modern technology that can be used for making things. These are some of the ones that we have. So a lot of what we're talking about are software tools that let you visualize a three-dimensional object and then sort of tell some kind of tool how to actually make that object. So we call that CAD, computer-aided design, and CAM, computer-aided manufacturing. So we have a lot of that kind of stuff. That's what these are. Adobe Creative Suite is actually a CAD and to some extent a CAM package. When you're working with lasers or large format printers, we consider that a CAD tool. Eagle and a couple other tools we have for electronics design. 3D scanning, so you can take a hand-designed sculpted object and make it into a three-dimensional model that you can then work with in the virtual world. And then the subtractive area are sort of more traditional tools for carving away at a piece of material to reveal the shape from it. But in this case, using a computer-controlled carving process or sawing process. And then in the additive side here, this is basically 3D printing. So this talk was, I think, maybe aimed at an audience who wasn't aware of these things. Is this a surprise to anybody? Have you heard of these terms, subtractive and additive? No, shaking. Okay, good. So now you know. So what we're trying to do is everybody that comes through NextFab, we try to elevate them. We're rung on a ladder of, towards, I guess, the top level, which is when you're actually making a business that employs people. It's kind of the goal. We want to have people that are making physical goods in the U.S. and employing people in that process, doing kind of high-value, skilled work, employing people in high-value skill jobs. So it starts out at the bottom here, the general public, they come in, they get to have a cocktail and see a 5-axis abrasive water jet cutter in action. Access is the second rung up, so you're now aware of what this stuff is, and you might actually want to use it yourself. So through a fitness gym kind of membership model, we have access to this, so you pay a monthly fee, and then you can come in and use our tools, and there are trainers who are expert, engineers, designers, and artists who can teach you how to use the tools and realize your creative or technical vision. At the competence tier, we're talking about training programs. So we have no expectation that you know how to do anything when you come in the door related to the technologies here. And we'll teach you how to do it. So if you've never touched a circular saw before, a table saw, we'll teach you how to do that. If you've never worked with a computer design software package, we can teach you how to do that, all the way through to getting some industry recognized certifications for using these tools. So you can put that on your resume and maybe get a job that you couldn't have gotten prior to that. And then at the commerce end, we're helping small companies get started by incubating them on site. Any questions? Yes, please.
Earlier in your talk, I kind of missed what you said about whether you were operating like a nonprofit and having to raise some of the funding for what you do. But do you raise money through grants, and what percentage of what you do is funded that way versus through rent or other sort of revenue?
A lot of these technologies are getting less expensive than they used to be. Probably 10 years ago, it would have been impossible for a company my size to have all that stuff. It was just too much money. You could have maybe one or two of these things, but not all of them. So I think that really means that these companies earlier in their evolution can actually buy the equipment they need to do the manufacturing themselves. So I think it's going to reduce the overall scale of companies that are involved in manufacturing. So you have more diversity, a lot more small sort of manufacturers making a wider variety of things. I think it's more robust that way. If a small company does out of business, if you have a lot of them, you're okay. If a mega corporation that employs 30,000 people goes out of business, it's a serious blow to your economy. So that's part of it. In terms of what you can make, there's sky's the limit with some of these tools. So 3D printing, you can make living tissues, replacement organs. You can make fancy aircraft parts. There's lots of new capabilities happening.
Can you talk about how you got started? I mean, I can't imagine you had 1,000 square feet at the beginning, right? And then also how that kind of relates to this moving kind of corporation project.
Okay. So I think I covered briefly. We started in this sort of other part of the city in a smaller location, but so the University City Science Center, which is a tech transfer nonprofit organization, helped us get started in 4,000 square feet in one of their buildings. And, it was a much smaller enterprise then. We had, just a small fraction of the capabilities that you see on this presentation. So what would that mean for a place like Wilmington? Well, I guess if you want to have something like, a makerspace to the scale of the big NextFab here, you need to have really big buildings that are relatively affordable to convert for the purpose. The building we moved into was pretty well set up already, so we didn't have to completely tear it down to the ground or anything like that. But there are ways to do smaller versions of this that are a little more targeted, that don't need, the 3,000 square foot model was good for a few years, and maybe after a few years you find a new space or something like that. So, 3,000 square feet you could do a fair bit. And that's not such a high hurdle, and there are a lot of buildings, I saw a number of buildings today that would be suitable. So it's doable. And as far as the funding side goes, I'm not the right person to talk to about Wilmington, but I think there are some people here tonight. Yeah, good.
How do you see NextFab expanding, and do you think that you would expand into different cities like Wilmington?
Well, the first step of expansion, we know already is going to be in Philadelphia, but on the other side of the city, the northern side. So we're figuring that out before we commit to something even further away that's a little harder to manage. So the theory I have in my head, because it sounds good, is hub and spoke. Right? You probably heard that with airports, hub and spoke. The airport stopped doing hub and spoke for certain reasons, so maybe I should pay attention to that. But because it's so expensive to make a really big, everything in one place kind of facility, my thought was, well, maybe we can make sort of smaller, more customized, tailored ones that meet the needs of a local community. And then if they need the bigger thing, they can come to the headquarters on occasion. So that's the vision. But definitely, considering other cities and meeting with a lot of people, that's part of why I'm here in Wilmington as well, is to see if there's an opportunity here. My hope is to find people here who, would really want to be a part of it, so that it's not, me just coming and trying to force it down the throats of people. I wouldn't want to do that if that's the case. It really does involve engagement and strong support from the local community for it to succeed. Yes, please.
Well, I think you really should be here. I'm watching this presentation and I'm thinking, you mentioned one of the things that you had to do in your lab is make nylon. Well, the company that made nylon is 5 miles up.
Yeah.
So I almost see that you could get some corporate support for instructing this state is full of engineers, and it could possibly be, your instructors, and that sort of thing, and going to the next level. In Philadelphia, you have corporate support that say, hey, we really need people that will, like you were talking about medical, like imaging and that sort of thing. And you've got a huge hospital.
Yes, a lot of hospitals.
Yeah.
So
do they support this, or do they pull in from like teaching and
Yeah, I'm a little underwhelmed with the level of support we've gotten. You know, everybody says it's great. They come and see it, and you know, they're like, we really should do this. This is great stuff, but they don't help. Maybe it's because we're doing okay on our own. I don't know. Maybe it's just the fact that I'm not as well connected in Philadelphia as some other people might be. But you know, that said, you know, I'm happy that they're supportive at least. They don't say anything negative. So the way we end up working with the larger corporations is we end up trying to host some of their staff at our facility, and you know, they pay us for that service. But it hasn't gone beyond that level yet. I would love to have, you know, more fulsome partnership of some kind, but hasn't happened in Philadelphia. Maybe this would be a better place for it.
Are there other Fab Labs around the country? I mean, is there a trade association organization yet?
There are, and so there are sort of different categories of this. It's shaping into an industry now with different kind of focal points. So Fab Labs are usually more in the nonprofit kind of area, so they're publicly funded organization. So that MIT one I mentioned, the MIT organization that started the first ones, you know, in Boston, later South Africa, and other places. There are some 300 of those, and a lot in the U.S. So if you, I think it's MIT Center for Bits and Atoms. So you can just look up like Fab Lab Network online, and you'll see that, you know, one's in Afghanistan, there's ones in Norway, there's ones in India, and there's a bunch in the U.S. as well. But these are smaller, and like I said, they're a little more like you know, publicly funded. And so then there's the maker spaces, which I consider NextFab to be more of a business model, where you know, we're trying to generate revenue to support what's going on. And there's two main players, I think, right now. Myself, because I'm always going to include myself as a main player. And then one called Tech Shop. And the nearest Tech Shop to here, I believe, is currently in Pittsburgh. But Tech Shop started out on the West Coast. Boo. Because now they're coming out here. And no. So they're in Washington, D.C., at least planning in Washington, D.C., Brooklyn. And then they have a few in California. And they're claiming they're going to open up, you know, tons everywhere. You know, so they're the kind of Starbucks in a way to I consider ourselves to be the local coffee shop. So yeah, and then there are a lot of other companies like NextFab that are starting up in, you know, various cities around the country that are trying to do exactly what we're doing. So it's, you know, it'll be competitive, and there'll be better quality of service and more affordable prices for the people who want to use it. So I think it's good. It's just not easy, you know. So it's nice to be the only one. So.
You mentioned very briefly about kind of the environment that NextFab Studio is in. So how have you seen a project of this magnitude affect the social, economic, culture, and demographic of the surrounding environment? Because I would think that that would also be an important factor with building an establishment within an environment where predominantly it's in an urban demographic culture setting. How does it affect that?
Well, I think it's enabled some local small businesses to have access to capabilities that they wouldn't have had access to at all otherwise. I think, you know, we've enabled them to see that it was relatively affordable for them to make their own signage for their company, for instance, or to, you know, make websites, or maybe to develop some sort of tools or products that they needed more cost effectively than if they had to hire a company to do it for them. So that's had a significant impact, and I think helped some companies be a little more profitable, or, you know, get to profitability a little sooner, that are, you know, starting up right in our area there. I think we've also helped some of the local schools in the neighborhood sort of accelerate or focus what technologies they wanted to bring into their school to help prepare their kids for, you know, what the coming job skills might need to be. So I think it's had that impact, but also just investing, you know, this is a lot of money to build this large facility, and just the people and the activity in the neighborhood, and, you know, being open till 10 p.m. means more foot traffic at night. It's more demand for pizza, you know, stuff like that. So the local businesses just get, you know, more traffic, and everything kind of perks up. You know, investment of a lot of sorts will do that, but I think particularly things that have a lot of users, a lot of people coming in and out, a lot of people like lingering, that they have that kind of impact. So this is one that has that kind of impact. Yeah.
We have time for one more question.
Okay. Why don't you pick? I don't want to be alienating anybody.
hasn't asked for yet.
I just want to thank you for coming here and, you know, giving us insight into the company. The Delaware Center for Contemporary Arts visited NextFab and the state from personal experience. Their facility is incredible. And from an artistic standpoint, we were able to meet with one of the artists who was using your facility. Her name is Shelley Spector. She has an exhibition at the PMA, Philadelphia Museum of Art. And she was using your studio to literally create some of the artwork that will be in that exhibition.
That's showing.
I recognize her picture. So I'd love it if you would talk about a little bit about the accessibility of the facility to artists and how it would be a place where artists could come and make work and how easy it would be for them to produce new ideas and new artwork in this three-dimensional printing capacity.
Well, I guess it's beyond three-dimensional printing, but I guess we've had a number of artists, but I think they may be a little bit pioneering artists in some sense. So we've got some that have gone really far with this. Shelley was one who explored some of these tools, and I guess, sorry, I'll try to focus on this question. What is accessible about it is the fact that we teach you how to use these tools that in the basic sense that you wouldn't normally have access to, so take some of that away. Or if you're a recent grad, you might have used these tools in school, but you lost access to them because you're no longer with the school. So we give you access to those again so you can continue whatever thought process you were working on as an artist. We have a lot under one roof, so you can start to combine different media and different processes, I think, in a way that might be difficult in a studio or even a collective that tends to kind of have one sort of smaller set of tools. Insight into how you might tackle a technical challenge. I think just that kind of supportive community is another bolstering effect. I don't know if it's actually helped any artists financially in terms of giving them access to potential museum purchasers or private citizen purchasers of their artwork, but I've definitely seen some impressive artwork come out that uses the digital tools. Thank you all.